Yeah, well, um, yeah, I guess we'll get right into it, Marshall. Thank you for joining me, Marshall. Um, Marshall, do you mind telling us your background? How did you get into this industry? How are you the screen printing coach?
Yeah, so a long time ago, wanted to get my master's degree in architecture, and I was really kind of reinventing my life. I had just gotten divorced, and I had a degree in art from Florida State University, and it just my life wasn't going the way I wanted it to go, and I started architecture school, and I didn't want any student loans. So I started a t-shirt company to do fraternity and sorority work. And that was going to be how I paid for my graduate school. And As you can tell from my hair, like I'm not a young guy, right? And So this was actually before computers. so, but I did really well. But at the time, we were using a thing called a stack camera, which is where the term camera ready comes from, because you have to get the thing ready for the camera. So it has to be kind of a good piece of art. And so anyway, I started my business and I did it for a couple of years, and the Mac came along, right? The Macintosh came along and totally revolutionized everything. And this new program came called Photoshop, right? And So I taught myself Photoshop and this other program called Freehand, and just started recreating my designs. And the company that was printing my shirts for me said, "Hey, we want you to be our art director. We're going to go this way." And that was in 1993. So I started in January 1993 and haven't really looked back. I was always the guy in the shop that was, "Hey, there's a better way of doing this. We should look at that type of stuff." And I got moved into operations, and eventually was that's kind of my calling, right? And So I left that company and started with another company back in 2011, and did that for 5 years as their chief operating officer. And this was a shop that printed about 1 million t-shirts a month, so it was kind of a big deal. and Everything I know, right, I has been because I've done the work and I've done the experiments and I've tried different things, and I've failed 8 gazillion ways you can fail at something. And that's how you learn, is you stub your toe and you think about, well, why did that happen? What do I need to know? Who has the answer? And that's how I've done everything my whole career. I started coaching full time in 2010. I mean, excuse me, part time and full time 2010, and then really full time in 2018. Which is what I do now. And I live out in Arizona. And So I've got my coaching thing that I'm doing. And also I've started Shirt Lab, which is my mastermind group that I do with my partners, Tom Rowan and Ali Banholzer. We just had our big event in New Orleans last weekend. It was awesome. And then I now have a new project I'm doing, which is all about Midjourney, which is about artificial intelligence and creating images for print creatives on how to design and iterate and be more creative faster. As an ex-art director, I can tell you the crush and the anxiety I would have trying to design a dozen of the coolest designs anybody's ever seen every single day. A couple of years of that, you flat run out of ideas, right? And now, if we're prompt engineers, we can get almost all of the work done using AI, and then we can edit it for our own use, and then we can get and score touchdowns way faster, right? So that's like, I don't know, 30 years of stuff in about what, 2 minutes, right? So I know I probably glossed over some stuff and whatever, but that's where I am. I teach at trade shows. I write for the magazines. I write a blog, and I have a YouTube show. I've got a podcast. I've got a lot of content that's hanging out there. So Would love to help anybody that's stuck. That's kind of my thing, is clarifying effective change. That's kind of my tagline, which is all about untying that knot that you seem to be in, right? So
Yeah, yeah. And speaking of that, I feel like the most common problem that people run into is like pricing. I feel like that's the first initial issue that they run into. What are the most common like pricing mistakes do you see? And I guess what is the best way to price your product?
well, the main one is you're using everybody else's pricing lists. That's
Right.
a huge no-no. You should never do that, right? Because how do you know that that guy isn't an idiot, right? So if you use his price list, how do you know he's making any money? You're all in a, so you assume that somebody knows what they're doing just because they're pricing something. But the best way that you can do it, okay, well, first off, is you need to be priced based on value. But you need to build a formula to be able to figure that out. And your pricing needs to be based on your actual costs. So you have to measure this stuff. You have to know what it costs you to do things, right? And if you don't know, how do you know you're making any money, right? So we have to know how what our costs are. We have to know our gross profit. We have to know our net profit. And a lot of people can't calculate that because they've never went to business school. They've never heard those terms. But it's really important that you know this stuff, because if you don't know it, how do you know your pricing is actually working for you? Okay. So in a nutshell, right, if you take all of your costs, every single dollar you're spending on the decoration, okay, not including the shirt, because we're going to mark that up differently, okay, take all of that stuff, right? Let's just say easy math here. You spend $1,000, okay? And if you printed 1,000 things, your cost per impression would be what?
About $1?
$1, right?
Right.
Yeah. But here's the thing. If you were super efficient, right, and you were able to print 2,000 impressions with that $1,000 spend, your cost per impression would be what?
50 cents.
50 cents. Hey, math test, Alex passes. So here's the thing. The more that you pump out with the same amount of cost, the lower your cost becomes, and that equals more profit. This is the reason why we need to know this stuff, okay? Now, here's the trick. We can't just mark things up a certain percentage and that's what we quote, because you could be leaving money on the table. What we really need to be doing is pricing based on the value that we're willing to pay for, right? And everything in your life, the computer you use, the car you drive, the blue jeans you wear, the ice cream you enjoy late at night like I do, the beer you drink, whatever, right? Some of this stuff, it doesn't matter what it costs, I'm buying it. You know, Alex, do you have something in your life? It doesn't matter what it costs. I'm not even looking at the pricing. I'm buying it. What is that?
Definitely. Honestly, when you're hungry, you want to buy food, you're gonna just buy the pizza if it's right there.
It doesn't even matter what it costs, does it? It's
Right.
$12, it's $15, it's $20. I'm getting it, right?
Right.
That's what I'm talking about, right? And so a lot of people get really wrapped up into somebody's going to beat my price by 25 cents or something, right? They're not going to go for it. Well, let me tell you, that's the wrong customer for you, right? What we really need to be doing is finding customers that are in alignment with the value that we're bringing, who will line up around the corner. And if you don't have customers that are evangelists for you, who are actually sending you other customers, right? You're probably trying to appeal to the wrong people, right? Mm-hmm. What we want more than anything is for our customers to give us other customers. Right. And we can charge them what we want because they appreciate the value that we bring. So what is that? So when you're talking about pricing, well, what is value? Mm-hmm. What do people pay more for? They pay more for speed, okay, which is why a convenience store costs more than a regular store, right? They pay for speed. They pay for the aspirational quality of something, right? That's why people pay more for first class than they do for coach on an airplane. That's why brands like Supreme or whoever, right? They'll charge $150 for a t-shirt, but it's the same white and red on a black shirt that anybody can do. Is it that good of a shirt? No, it's because they're really good at marketing their value. Okay. So the question is, do they have a formula? Of course they do, right? So people pay more for scarcity, which is why limited edition runs are so popular. So look at Johnny Cupcakes, for example, right? So a lot of people do different things to earn the extra value, right? They also pay for personalization, which is where DTF or DTG comes into play here. Because let's say you did a, I don't know, high school senior class design, right? And you have a high school senior class image, that's the design, but in the circle is a senior portrait of every graduating student, right? So every shirt looks the same, but every shirt is different because you've got that kid on the shirt. Instead of selling that shirt for 20 bucks, now that shirt goes for 38 and they'll buy 3 because grandma wants one. Okay. So this is how you're earning more value, because you can figure that out, right? And so a lot of people, they just get wrapped up into doing the bare minimum, right? And they're all over Facebook wondering how to price a 2-color Gildan on 100 shirts. And at that level, sometimes we haven't done all the research yet. We don't know what we're doing with our business yet. We haven't learned how to calculate our price based on our own math and based on our value. And so a lot of people are reaching out. It's kind of like a drowning man reaching for the life preserver at that point, right? And what we want, though, is we want to learn how to do this stuff and do it properly. And I think by really using your own numbers and your own math, and truly trying to understand the value that you're bringing to your customers, you can be charging more for stuff and do it in a formulaic way where it's easy for you to calculate that price. Does that make sense, Alex?
Yeah, that makes sense. And for the shops who are struggling to market like their value and they're so scared of losing the bid, what advice would you have for a shop just so they can really advertise the value that they're providing?
Well, they got to know their customers first. So do they have a business plan? Only about 60% of the people I talk to actually have a business plan, which is identifying their ideal customer. Who is that? And so what they try to do is they try to have a shotgun approach, and they'll just print shirts for anybody and not printing shirts for only the people that really matter, right? And then who is that, right? If you can nail who that is, what is their quantity? What is their order frequency? What is their problem? What is their pain point? How are they using the shirts? If you get into those details and you write a business plan that solves all that, that's how you deliver that value, because you're communicating that value to them with your marketing and everything. And it's not about price anymore. It's about how you're solving their particular problem. But a lot of people, they just, hey, they have what I call the field of dreams mentality, where if they build it, we will come, right? So I've got a press, I can print shirts. I'm hoping, where are my customers, right? And that's where they stop. So you got to put a little more effort into it, right? So
yeah, when a shop finally identifies their key avatar, and plus they have all their ideas of their expenses, what is the best way to get more leads? I guess for lead generation, do you suggest some kind of outreach?
Well, hold on. So where are your customers? If you know your customers, right, you know where they are, right? And they're going to be in 3 locations, right? Do you know the 3 locations, Alex?
Is it in person, online, and not sure what the third one is?
Almost. Oh, all right. So it's geography, right? So they're in your neighborhood, right? Your neighborhood could be 1-day business ground from you. That could be your neighborhood. It could be, easy shipping, where I'll get in a car and drive an hour or 2. That could be your neighborhood, or it could just be 2 miles from you. Okay. They're going to be online somewhere. So that's a Facebook group. That's a LinkedIn group. That's some sort of digital presence somewhere. And then there's also social, right? So they're in a union, they're in an association, they're in an organization. They're all army people, right? They're all army officers. Okay. So that's the association, right? And so if you appeal to that association, if you're finding them online, if you can find them in your neighborhood, right? It's kind of like, do you hunt or fish, Alex?
I used to, but not anymore.
Well, what did you do? Hunting or fishing?
I used to go fishing with my uncle all the time.
What type of fish?
Um, See, I was too little. I was really going for the boat ride, but he was the
Yeah.
one going out there for the striped bass, and he had like a certain bait just for that specific fish.
Okay, so is that like out in the ocean, or is that like a lake?
Um, no, we'd go like kind of deep sea fishing.
Deep sea
Farther.
fishing. Okay, great. You're deep sea fishing. So you wanted striped bass out in the ocean, right? And you went out on a charter and the whole thing, right?
Mm.
You know what you weren't doing? You weren't standing on the edge of a river, right? Casting a line or off a dock or in a rowboat or something trying to fish, right?
Yeah.
Because that fish isn't in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we think about our customers, we want to fish where the fish that we want live, right? It's really important to be in that spot, wherever that is, right? And a lot of people get wrapped up into, well, I got a Facebook work, especially if you do it online, in the groups, like they'll say, well, I use Facebook. That's what works for me. Well, guess what? They might be after different fish, okay, than you. It's not going to work for you because you're after different fish. So don't believe what people tell you. Believe your own research. Where are the customers, your fish, where are they swimming? That's where we want to go, right? And that might mean you have to do a booth at a trade show. That might mean you got to do door-to-door cold calls. That might mean you got to answer and ask questions in a LinkedIn group, right? It might mean that you got to put an ad in the association newsletter, okay? So where are the eyeballs coming from, right? It's really important that you do the research. That's how you can do some things, right? Now, what I'll tell you from marketing is that it's extremely noisy out there, right? Everybody's bombarded with the gazillion messages all the time with stuff. And how you stand out from people is you got to do things differently, right? So how are you appealing to people? How are you getting noticed? And more often than not, how are you getting your customers to talk about you? That's what's really important, because if you can get your customers to talk about you and evangelize you, then your effort of a salesperson is so much easier. Okay. So think about your, like, have you heard of liquid death water?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So you know what they're not? They're not Dasani. They're not Aquafina, right? They're completely nuts. Okay, they do crazy stuff all the time. Okay, and they went from zero to like a $400 million valuation, I think, in like 2 years or some crazy thing like that, right? And that's just because they're appealing to their demographic. Who's their demographic? Skateboarders and tattoo parlors and people who are kind of on their fringe that aren't like normal people. Like, they're people who kind of like will do the crazy things. And that's who they're appealing to. They're not appealing to the stuffy people. Okay. They know their audience and they're going to do the craziest stuff. Right. And guess what? All of those people talk about them. All of those people show up with this stuff. All of those people demand their product. Right. So if you're trying to appeal to a group, right, how can you be known from that group differently? That's what's really important. How can you get them to talk about you? And so instead of yelling at them, how can you be one with them? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and one of the offers that I actually ran to like construction companies and restaurants was 100 shirts printed in a week, or printed in 7 days, or it's free. Yeah. And that got a lot of people. What are some offers that you see working pretty well?
Offers. Well, you know, I don't like discounts so much because you're teaching your customer that you're going to work for cheap and they'll just wait for the coupon, right? So why do I need to pay you this if I just wait a week or give me a coupon? That's the reason why Bed Bath & Beyond, like, they could never charge anything full price, because if we just wait a coupon, we'll get it 15% off, because next week I'm getting a coupon. Okay. But everything that's in that store is 15% higher than it should be, because they're trying to sell at their price, right? What I like is bundles. right? So you could say, hey, we'll do a t-shirt and a hat, or a hoodie and a t-shirt, or you do some hats, we'll do some stickers, right? You do like a bundle, a special and introductory bundle, right? We want to get to know you. We'll throw in the free art. We'll throw in free delivery. We'll throw in something to get this thing going. It's kind of like priming the pump. I like those type of things a lot better because it's playing to your strengths. It's not discounting what you have. You know, if you look at some successful companies like Chick-fil-A, okay, when was the last time you ever had a coupon for 50 cents off a chicken sandwich at Chick-fil-A?
Never.
Never, because for Chick-fil-A, it's either full price or free. You might get a coupon for a free peach milkshake because they want you to try it, but they're not going to ever discount it. They're going to just give it to you for free because that's better for them for marketing. They don't ever want to discount anything. Okay. And arguably they're probably one of the best fast food restaurants around. Right. And so just look around at other types of industries in your area and see what other people might do and might work. Because to me, sometimes some of this stuff is geography or location based. What seems to work here for a popular whatever other business, you could apply that to your own business and say, hey, if I did something like that, maybe I might have that success too, and just have a different name or different offer or different whatever, right?
Yeah, and I noticed a lot of shops, once they start getting all those leads and like they get really busy, the next problem they run into is having trouble quoting and invoicing all these customers. What advice would you have for someone?
Well, you got to have a system, right? So are you using a system? Like there's plenty of them out there, right? Inksoft, Shopwork, Shopvox, Price It, YoPrint, whatever. I mean, there's a million of these things, right? They all work. They're all great, right? That's a really good system. But you got to be organized. You got to have a process. And what we want more than anything is that it's rinse and repeat. We're doing everything exactly the same way every single time. And a lot of startup shops, you know, they get over their head quickly, right? It's because they don't have processes. Because they haven't needed it. You know, when you're only doing 2 jobs a week, it's not a big deal. But when you're doing 2 jobs an hour, or 100 jobs a week or 1,000 jobs a week, you got to have a system. Right. Okay. And so it's one of these things, you got to have it so everybody can do it. Everybody knows what to do. And you're trained employees on how to do things. And there's only one way of doing it. Right. It's not Bill does it one way, Nancy does it another way, and Ted does it his own way because he's crazy. Okay. We all have that crazy Ted that works there. Right. So what we want is everybody doing it the same way. So it doesn't matter who's doing it. Everything gets done correctly. And this is not just putting an order in. This is burning screens or receiving or buying stuff from SNS or whatever it is. We have to always do it the same way. And so that's why we have processes. So the more processes you have, the smoother everything's going to work. And if you don't have processes, what happens is that's where you get that crazy hiccup, right? And also you were mentioning a minute ago about the peaks and valleys, right? We're not busy, then we get busy, and then, you know, that's always a huge problem. We always have to be selling. Right. And just because you're busy doesn't mean your foot comes off the gas. Right. Because this is the biggest problem we have in this industry, and you probably know this, is the peak and valley, right? We get really super busy and now we don't have any time for stuff and we quit selling, and then we have no jobs and we go down. And then by the time we get some more jobs, it's been 2 or 3 weeks and we're all stressed, right? What we want more than anything is just super even. Right. Right. So how are we doing that? What are we doing? What are we saying yes to? Are we saying yes to loser jobs that we're not making any money on? Right. We can't just be busy just to be busy. Right. If a job isn't profitable, say no. If you're out of your element, say no. Right. If you only have a 4-color press, that's an 8-color job, outsource it. Don't try to print it. Just outsource it to somebody who can do that for you. Right. It's okay. Right. Your customer doesn't care that you printed it. They absolutely don't care, right? And if you think that they do, you're crazy. Because let me tell you, you ever heard of the promotional item industry?
Yeah, it's crazy. Like they do,
everything. I don't know, $27 billion worth of apparel a year. Not a single one of those people owns their own stuff. Okay. They're outsourcing it, all of it.
Mhm.
All right. And their customers don't care that they didn't print it. Okay. And so it's just one of these things. Don't get all worked up about that. You can outsource that stuff.
Right. Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that. So the first time I hit 20,000 a month, I was so busy that I didn't know how to like quote all the jobs. Once I systemized that and got the prices down, we hired another person to quote all the jobs, and we almost doubled within the first month of setting up that system.
Yeah.
I guess the next bottleneck that I saw people run into is, I guess it comes down to production after that. So what's the best process after, from when the customer pays the invoice, approves the mockup? Where do you see the shop going from there?
Well, first off, we have to have some systematic ways to do things, right? And I'm a big believer in scheduling jobs. And I want you to, have you ever been to an airport, Alex?
I have.
How does they know months in advance that flight 612 is going to be leaving at 11 o'clock or whatever, right? It's because they've got it planned out, right? Mm-hmm. And you can do the same thing too, right? So I want you to consider all of your, like if your shop was an airport, and let's say you had multiple presses, you've got an auto and you got a manual, okay? So we want to schedule jobs to the manual, we want to schedule jobs to the auto, and what we want to do is jobs are coming in, like how many jobs did you quote this week? Did you sell this week that came in? Let's say you did an average of 5 a day, okay? So we're going to take those 5 jobs and we're going to schedule them to the press for next week or 2 weeks from now, whenever you're going to be doing the jobs, and you're going to put them you're going to have a system where it could be a whiteboard, it could be a computer system, whatever you have to that job, weeks in advance, days in advance. So on manual or auto or press 1, press 2, press 3, press 4, you're scheduling these jobs down, right? And if you've got if you've got good control over your KPIs, you know how long it takes you to set up, you know how long it takes you to run a job, right? You know how long it takes you to break down. Those are the things you should be measuring and get the averages, by the way. Then if we know, for example, we can set up in, let's say, 5 minutes a screen, there we're going to run at 400 an hour on the auto and 60 an hour on the manual, and it's about 10 minutes or so to break down, then we can say that job's going to take, calculator, 35 minutes for that job, hour and a half for that job, 45 minutes for that job, right? And then you just use a pencil and put it on the top corner of the work order. And then what we're going to do is we're going to, a couple of days out, we're going to schedule this stuff to, here's the first job for the day, here's the second job for the day, here's the third job for the day. And we're going to build that schedule. Now, what happens in the middle, okay, is we got to get the art approved. We got to buy the shirts. They got to come in. We got to receive them. There's some challenges with all that sometimes. And what happens is the day we're supposed to start this job gets closer and closer and closer. And if some of the stuff hasn't happened, what we need to do is to push the job out. Okay. Because what we can't do, okay, we can't print the job the day the shirts come in. We can't print the job the day we burn the screens. That's just too crazy. Okay. We need everything done in advance so we can be working at we're hustling, we're doing things, we're doing things at a good speed, but we're not like crazy land trying to cram everything in a day, because what happens is that's where all the mistakes are made. Right. Mm-hmm. So what we want is professional cadence with things. We want everything planned. And the day before we're supposed to print something, let's say let's say tomorrow, what is today? Today's Monday, right? So let's say tomorrow's jobs, we're prepping for tomorrow. We're going to do what I call the scavenger hunt today, where we go get all the shirts and all the screens and all the ink and all the samples, all the work order documents for tomorrow's jobs. We're going to have a list that's in the order we want to run the jobs in. We're going to pull that to the press and we're going to stage it right there in line. So the people that are running our jobs for us don't ever look for anything. Right. Your press operator should never be in the screen room. Your press operator should never be in the ink room, right? That press has its own gravitational pull. Everything comes to them. Mm-hmm. Okay. They don't look for anything. All they do is set the job up, run the job, take the job down, set the next one up, rinse and repeat all day. Right. This sounds easy to do. It's a minute to get this stuff set up and make it a habit. And then once you do, it just works beautifully for forever. Okay.
Yeah.
But it requires people to be accountable. Okay. Somebody has to be in charge of getting everything set up for tomorrow before they leave today. Usually that's the production manager. It doesn't have to be him or her that has to do this work. They're just in charge of doing it. And then the other thing that goes with that is this mantra, which is rush late today, tomorrow. This is how you set jobs up in your priority. Rush jobs are always first because typically they're critical. Somebody paid you for a rush fee or something. We always want to do those first. So Tuesday morning, we're doing all those rush jobs first. Better is we did them on Monday afternoon. Okay. We want those out of the way, right? But we're going to do those first on Tuesday. Next is late jobs. Late jobs cannot get later. All you're going to do is piss your clients off, right? Late jobs are super important. So we do rush first, then we do late, and then we do jobs that are scheduled for today. Okay. So we don't get to do today's jobs till those other two jobs are done, right? And then we crank out all of today's stuff. And then and only then do we do stuff that we can maybe do for Wednesday, right? Or later in the week. Now, here's the challenge. And I know a lot of people do this, right? So they'll look on their schedule and they got a job they're doing tomorrow. And then next week, there's another job. Let's just say it's ready to go. Both of these jobs use sleeve boards, right? And you go, you know what? While we're doing this one, we already have the sleeve board set up. Let's go ahead and run the job for next week with the sleeves. Okay. And the problem with that is you didn't need to do that until next week. And now, because you're doing those shirts, the other jobs that had to go today or go tomorrow, whatever, they get bumped. And now that's why you're late, is because you started doing something too early, right? Just do it when it's scheduled and have the changeover time for the boards calculated in your pricing, calculated in what you're doing, right? And that way you've got time because you've budgeted the time for it.
Yeah, that's perfect. That is so much value right there. I've been guilty of that so many times where I had to set up and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna do it right now.
Yeah, I'm just gonna do it. Maybe you like the client, maybe they're like your favorite client of yours or whatever. And let's go ahead and knock it out because they'll really love it. Okay. Well, the challenge is that creates lots of chaos, right? And so you have to resist the urge. Do things in the order that you've scheduled them in.
Right.
You know, have you ever been sitting on the tarmac on an airplane waiting for the gate because their gate isn't open?
Right.
That's what that job feels like that you're blowing off because you're printing somebody else's. They're sitting on their tarmac going, man, don't they know we're here? So
yeah. So for a shop who has never measured their KPIs before, what do you recommend? Do you recommend them just take out their phone, record whenever they're setting up a job?
Well, here's the thing. KPI stands for key performance indicator. Okay. So for shops, what is that? And I'll give you some basic ones, but if these don't float your boat, it's okay. What matters to you? Okay. And by the way, KPIs can be about anything. It can be about sales. It can be about your screen room. It can be about the number of boxes we're receiving a day and receiving whatever. Right. But to me, the best way to calculate this stuff is just with a simple worksheet. Right. And a yellow legal pad will work fine. A whiteboard where you're just making tick marks works fine too. Right. What we want to know is how many, how long, right. And what's the total on some things. Right. So let's say we're doing screen setup. How many minutes on average does it take for us to set up a screen? Or set up a job, right? If you know the average on that, it's really easy to say, well, my average is X times how many screens. So I'm going to take 10 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes just in screen setup. And that's what I'm budgeting. Okay. Hopefully they do it quicker. But let me tell you, the time for setting, you're measuring here, isn't just them setting it up. but it's also the approval part, right? Because let's say it's a 2-color job and they set it up in 10 minutes, 5 minutes a screen, okay? Which is what I like. I like people to be setting up in under 5 minutes a screen. But the manager has to approve it, and he's on the phone or whatever and doesn't come over for 15 minutes. So that 10 minutes of setup time plus the 15 minutes, right? That's 25 minutes of total time it took to approve that job. Okay. You have to have the approval part of that, because guess what? It's a team effort in production. It isn't just the guy running the press. It's the whole enchilada that you got to look at, right? So how can we get jobs approved faster, right? I tell you how you can get jobs approved faster is the person who's supposed to be approving knows that in 5 minutes, come over to the auto because I got a job for you to look at. You let them know. And a lot of people use Slack, they use walkie-talkies, you can use a doorbell, right? Ding dong, that just means, hey, come out here in 5 minutes, I got a job to approve. Okay. And that way we can move faster. It's all about decreasing our downtime, right? So if we know how long it takes to set up on average, right, then we can use that in our scheduling. Okay. It's the same thing for running a job, right? How long does it take to run a job, right? So an auto, okay, a fully staffed auto averages around 400 impressions hour, excuse me. So 400 impressions an hour. So that's a press operator, a puller, and a catcher. That's fully staffed. Okay. I go to shops all the time and there's a press operator and a catcher, but no puller. And they're around 150, 175 an hour. Okay. And I'm like, why is that not staffed? And they go, well, we don't, I don't want to hire another guy, that type of stuff. But what they're not realizing is that is really crimping how much work they can get out a day. Right now, this is assuming they're selling and doing a good job of getting sales in and they have lots of orders. So this is equivalent of you driving your car and only getting into like second gear, right? Because you don't want to pay for third and fourth and fifth gears, right? Even though that's going to get you to where you want faster, which is we got all this stuff. We don't want to do that because, and they'd rather have another whole shift.
Right.
Yeah. It's always amazed me, right? At that, right? Now, and 400 an hour is really because your speed's determined for the squeegee stroke length, right? So 400 an hour is really an average. Like I had guys for me that were 550, 600 an hour all day, right? It just really depends on the crew and what they do and what type of jobs you're giving them and all that. And also, was that a hoodie? Is that a t-shirt? Is that a bandana? All those are going to have different numbers, right? But what you want to know is what is your average for that press? And I hear all the time, well, you say 400 an hour, but all our jobs are like, 100 pieces. I'm like, yeah. So that would take them 15 minutes to print. That's 400 an hour. Okay.
Yeah, and so the most shops I talk to, they know they need to hire someone, but when I ask them, why don't you hire someone? It always comes down to hiring and training. What do you think is the best way to train like a new person? No experience at all.
Well, you just need people who are willing to work. Right. And geographically, that's in different areas of the country. If you're in a big city, you've got a lot of people to pick from. If you're out in BFE somewhere, good luck. And it's also about what you pay and what you do. And I think a lot of shops are now becoming more competitive with pay and also what is the environment. I know some shops that will, because they can't find people or air conditioning their shop because in their town, right, there's so many screen printers and these people are working in 75 degrees and then over here it's 114 next to the dryer, right? We're all doing the same thing. So if I'm getting paid the same, why would I work in the hot place? Why not work over here in their air conditioning? I went into this one shop one time in Louisiana and it was so cold in there and it was in the middle of the summer. I was like, man, I should have brought a jacket.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's really important.
It's a competitive advantage. Okay. And so anyway, where do we find people? your employees are your best resource. They all know people who are looking for a job, right? So offer a $200 or $500 signing bonus. So if whoever they recommend, if they make it to their 90 days, you give them the bonus, right? And then that always worked great for me. Also, temp agencies are a good resource. Posting on social media, we're looking for people. Always list the pay because that saves you time. If you put a pay range, say it's $15 to $22 an hour or whatever it is, you don't have to pay on the 22 because there's a range because it's based on experience. But if you don't put the money, somebody that's making under that or somebody making way over that, if they answer your ad, now you wasted their time and your time because you're never going to hire them.
Yeah. And for bring on a new hire, how do you think you should train someone on, like, say, with the press, or like teach them how to screen print?
Well, I like to work people. So a really great thing to do is to get about first off, the first thing we teach people is how to read a work order. Everybody in the company has to know how to read a work order, right? When is something due? What's the shirt color? How many locations are we doing? What are we supposed to do with this job? When is it supposed to leave the building? Everybody needs to know that. So if they see a work order that's late or there's a problem or whatever, they already know how to read it and they can understand what they're supposed to do. That's job number one, is reading a work order. Okay. Job number two, let's say they're going to learn to run the auto, right? So the first thing we want to do really is to have them just pull shirts and have the operator train them. But if we want them to actually run the press later, I would suggest using a manual. And I would suggest that we get about a dozen or 2 dozen shirts, and we take some 1-inch wide tape or maybe a thick marker, and we make a Christian cross on it. Okay. Long vertical and right here across the nipples. Okay. And we practice loading the shirt. Okay. We practice loading the shirt. And we want to know, and we watch them, and we want to know, are they right-handed or left-handed? Because what happens if you're loading shirts all day, you stop thinking about what you're doing. And then if I'm right-handed, my right hand's going to lead. And what's going to do to the shirt if I'm doing that, right? It's going to make it crooked, right? So we want to teach people that we have to load in parallel, right? And so that's what we show them. And the reason the cross is on there is because this is how you teach them how to find the center, how to make it so it's even, right? And it's easy to see it when that cross is on there, right? And you can just use some junk shirts or something for that. And then they get good at, let's just have them load the shirts, take them off, load some more, take them off and load some more. Do it in like 30-minute little intervals. And if they get good at that, right, great. Hey, let me show you how to manually print a 1-color left chest, right? Also, a good thing to do is if you have a manual, you could do what's called a speed table. You ever heard of that? You know what that is? Nope, so a speed table is somebody loads the shirt while the other person prints. Okay. You can get a manual press up to about 150, 200 an hour doing that, right? So this is a really great way to bust out some jobs, by the way. So you'll have a person loading the shirt while the other person is printing, and then you keep spinning around and then we take the shirts off, load some more shirts. And what's happening is the person who doesn't know how to print isn't printing. They're just loading the shirts. Now they're getting experience taking shirts off the cart and loading them on at a slower pace than that auto, which frankly scares people because it moves by itself, So we just get used to doing that, right? Just loading the shirts and having somebody print the shirts. And that is like the best thing you can do to learn how to load the press, right? Because it's not as fast as the auto, but you're contributing to a job, right? And then, it can switch places, the last 50 shirts, hey, Alex, you print them. Let's see what you can do, right? And it's a 1-color black on a gold shirt. It's easy. Well, there you go. Now they're unloading the shirt, right? So it just makes it a kind of a fun thing, and they can learn. But what we want to do is we want to kind of ease them into things at the end of the day or the first job in the morning or whatever it is. you give them 30 minutes and show them something, right? Have them do something, right? And then break down each of the steps, not just running a press, but mixing ink or receiving or burning a screen or whatever it is. You break things down into little chunks, and we work on things in little 30-minute little sessions. And then once they learn that part, then we'll go to the next thing, right? And then depending on the person, they can be fully trained in just a matter of weeks.
And what do you tell the shop owners who are just themselves and they're too scared to hire the first person?
Okay, well, how much are you going to pay? Let's say we're going to pay somebody $20 an hour. Okay, I don't know. People live all over. Again, $20 an hour in some locations is a lot of money. In other places, you can't get anybody to work for $20 an hour. It just depends on where you are, right? So let's just use that as a thing, right? So they're going to $20 an hour at 40 hours is $800, right? So if you're scared that you're not going to have enough money to pay them, every single week, take $800 and put it in a savings account, right? And do that for a month, right? Did it hurt your business? No? Okay, well, now you can afford to hire somebody. And now you've got a whole month's salary in the savings account. Okay. And now you hire somebody and you leave the money in the savings account just in case. Okay. And there you go. If you can't afford to hire somebody, that's okay. It's nothing. It's no bad thing. It really depends on what you're looking at. Like I use a virtual assistant, right? They're great. Mine lives in the Philippines, and it cost me less than 10 bucks an hour. Okay. So it's a good economical way to get stuff done. Right. And you go, well, that's crappy wages. In America, in the Philippines, she makes good money. Right. And so it's like one of these things where you got to take advantage of what's going out there. Right. And what do you need? Also, a good thing to think about is there's a great book out called Who Not How, right? I don't know if you've seen that book, but if you've got a problem out there, think about who can solve that problem for you. Is that somebody that you can hire? Is that a company that can do it for you? Is that some software you can buy? Is that a coach that can teach you how to do stuff, right? Is it a class that you can take? Whatever, right? Think about who can help you with it. You don't have to know the answer. You just have to find who has the talent or the skill or the knowledge and get them to help you over the speed bump, right? And it can be a part-time person. Okay, it doesn't have to be full-time. It can be part-time. My wife, she has what we call a mom job, right? She's been working for this company for a while, and she started back when my kid was in school, and it was just kind of like a 9 to 2 o'clock thing, and she's still doing it, right? Although her hours are more now, but it's like one of these things where not everybody has to work full-time. You can get 2 part-time college students to make up to be a full-time person. There's a lot of opportunity out there. I think a lot of people miss, right? So you just got to find the people and try. And just because, and by the way, I've heard this a million times. Well, I tried that and that guy was a jerk. It's like, well, that doesn't mean the next person will be the same kid, So you gotta just keep doing it, keep trying, and then you'll find the right people, Also, I'll also throw this out there. If people don't want to work for you, there might be a reason for that, right? And so another thing to do is to look at what does Wendy's pay? How much does they pay to make a sandwich at Subway? Your job is harder than that. Okay. So if I can stand in the air conditioning and make a club sandwich and I'm making more than you're paying in your shop, there might be a reason why you're not getting the people that you need.
Right.
So, and if you say, well, I can't afford anybody, I'll tell you, you've got the wrong customers. You should be charging more. Rethink your business model, rethink your customers. There's people out there that will buy and spend way more money than what you're charging. So think about how to get them interested in that, right?
Yeah, and speaking about production again, a lot of people that I work with, they run into an issue of print on demand stores or like those online
Yep,
school stores.
of
What's the
course.
best, yeah, what's the best way to organize that when the orders come in and out? If you have a DTF printer or DTG printer, compared to if you have like a just an automatic.
Well, this goes to your shop software, right?
Mhm,
So, like if you're organizing for that, it should all be through your software.
mhm,
So your software, if you're using a print on demand service, right? If you that's what you're doing, right? Everything should go through and automate that so everything is happening for you,
mhm,
right? Like there's print on demand software like Chipley, where when that store closes, it automatically orders the goods for you.
mhm,
Okay, so you don't have to do that, right?
mhm,
And so it's just think about how you can use the tools that are out there to solve your problem, whatever that problem is, right?
mhm,
And so let's get a scenario. Let's say you're doing a print on demand and you're doing something for a school, right? There's two ways of doing something for a school. You could say, hey, well, once we get to 300, we're going to close the store down and then we're going to print all 300 shirts. Okay. So that might seem easy, but the problem is everybody's waiting for the store to close, right? So, and that's still kind of print on demand. A better way of doing it is when somebody orders a shirt, you decorate the shirt and you ship it to them, and then they wear it to school, and that influences their friends to buy more things from the school. So instead of selling 300 shirts, now you sold 563 because
mhm,
everybody's like, hey, where'd you get that? It's all, I don't want to be left out. I got to be cool like you. I want the shirt, right? And so that all happens by instantly ordering, right? So you can be ordering shirts from like SNS or whoever instantly. And so every day, or you could just say, you know what, I'm just going to bring in some shirts and stock 2 cases of each color by size and just pull from that and keep inventory on the floor. And all my stores will use the same inventory, right? And
mhm,
I'll just keep track of the inventory that way instead of ordering per shirt, right? Because it's all, so the print on demand thing is all about speed. The faster you can get the product to the customer, the more that customer group is going to order.
mhm.
Okay, because it's everybody wants to keep up with the Joneses, you know,
Right.
and you want things easy, right?
Mhm.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, that's a really good solution to the thing. I guess it really depends on the software you have and utilizing everything you have
there's
going on.
there's so many variables and everybody's doing so many different things, right?
Mhm,
And so what I'll tell you is that this is a great industry because it's kind of a mix of art and science, a little bit of physics in, right? But
mhm,
I can tell you that, a lot of times people try to solve a problem and they create 10 more problems.
mhm,
So that's when things get kind of weird, right? But
mhm,
you know, what we're trying to do more than anything is if you can eliminate the variables, if you can eliminate the steps, if you can make things the simplest thing you can do, you'll have more success.
mhm.
And also, we should be looking at the types of work that we're doing, the types of customers that we're doing, because they're, have you ever heard of that, like an 80-20 audit? You ever heard of that?
Mhm. Yep.
What is that, Alex?
20% of what you do results for 80% of the outcome.
Yeah.
Or
Okay. Well, for our customers, the top 20% of our customers give us 80% of our revenue, right?
right.
So what does that mean? From profit wise, it means that the bottom 80% of our customers only give us 20% of our revenue. So
Mhm.
who are these turkeys that we're doing all the stuff for? Okay. This
Right.
is the reason why we're so busy not making any money.
Mhm.
And so an easy thing to do is to go into QuickBooks or whatever you use and export out all your customers by their sales totals and then sort it by the best customers at the top and the worst customers on the bottom, and then calculate how many customers you have and what's the revenue, and then find the top 20% and then look at those type of customers. Who are they? Right.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you what, they're not like do me a favor guy at the bottom who only needed 8 shirts, right? That guy is a waste of your time, right?
Mhm.
What we want is the stuff at the top, right? And that's really going to help you, right? And because we spend a lot of time changing things over, we spend a lot of time in this industry not making any money. And what we want to really be thinking about is when our equipment is running, how much money are we trying to make it per hour with that press, or with that embroidery machine, or with that heat press, or whatever it is? What are we trying to make per hour? And so if we're not running jobs on it because it's down, we're waiting, we're setting up, we're mixing ink, we're burning screens, we're doing all this stuff while we're waiting, okay, we're not making any money, okay? The more that those pieces of equipment run per day, the more money we're making, because all those are jobs that are shipping.
Mm-hmm.
So what you have to think about is, how can we eliminate the downtime? If we eliminate the downtime, we can be a more profitable company, because we're actually doing the work that makes us money, which is decorating a garment.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I think a lot of times people focus on the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah,
know?
and I know we're running out of time slowly, but I guess for the last question, you mentioned AI in the very beginning. How do
Yeah.
you think a shop should integrate AI into their shop?
Well, there's lots of AI, right? There's Chat GPT or OpenAI. It's the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I use it every day, right? And you should be using it, and you should be asking it to do things for you. It can
Mm-hmm.
write an employee handbook. It can write an online store product description. It
Mm-hmm.
like, let's say you're doing an online store for the Jackson Jaguars elementary school, right? You could write a product description that says, hey, write me a product description for the Jackson Jaguars elementary school online store, and you can paste in the default thing that you get from Inksoft or whatever, boom, right? And then make it fun, make it friendly, and make it SEO conscious, right? And
Mm-hmm.
boom, here it goes. Here's the new one. 2 seconds, right? You could use it like I've used it, like write me a bio about this person based on this LinkedIn profile, and keep it under 200 words. Bloop, here it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Write me an outline for my next 60 social media posts for Instagram. I need a catchy phrase. Boom, there they are, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's easy, right? But you got to just use it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
the next thing, AI, of course, that I'm doing a lot of stuff with now is Midjourney, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, Alex, have you used Midjourney? Do you know what that is?
I've used different versions with like Dolly E.
Yep.
Like your
I'm a
own
big
graphic
Midjourney
designer.
fan. I
Mm-hmm.
think Midjourney gives you the best results, and it's the
Mm-hmm.
easiest to use.
Yeah.
Also, it's I just think it performs the best.
Mm-hmm.
All of them, Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, DALL-E, they all do the same thing, which is use word prompts to bust out some sort of image. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the great thing here is that you can put these prompts in, and it'll give you an image that maybe is perfect, maybe it's not, or whatever, but you know what? It's almost there. And
Mm-hmm.
in under a minute, you've got, like, especially Midjourney gives you 4 to choose from. And if you like it, you can pick one. If you don't like it, you can hit reroll, or you can upscale, and you can do some different things with variations. And then in a matter of 2 or 3 minutes, you could have 16, 20 different images that you can show your client, throw some type on it, so do some different things. And then in less than 20 or 30 minutes, you've got a design that you can sell, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just knowing how to use it and knowing how to separate it later in Photoshop or whatever. You can also take it and vectorize it and do a bunch of stuff later with it. But the thing about it is it's going to get you the results faster, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of people are scared of it, and they don't trust it. They think it's stealing, or they're just unethical. I totally get that, and I respect your position. However, I do know that if you have to please your customer, and you're trying to do a bunch of different stuff every single day, and you want to have fantastic looking art, this is a really great way of doing it. And you just have to learn how to use the tool. And a lot of people judge it without ever playing with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I would get in there and I would mess around with it. And if you want to see the capabilities of it, just check out my Instagram, which is just my name, Marshall Atkinson. And I post a little mid-journey experiment in there every single day. I'm doing stuff where I'm simulating embroidery, or I'm simulating a rusty piece of metal, or I'm designing a motorcycle thing, or I'm doing a hot rod car, or I'm doing a spaceship, or a school mascot. There's all types of stuff in there that I've been playing around with. And I've started a new newsletter just for creative professionals to use Midjourney for print. And so it's like one of these things. I really believe that this is really going to help creatives iterate and create faster to make better pieces of art for their customers. And for the people that are worried that AI might take their job, it's like, AI isn't going to take your job. And the reason for that is because AI can't do your job. But who's going to take your job is somebody who knows how to use AI, because they're going to work circles around the old way of doing things.
Right. Yeah. And
And
Marshall, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, I was just saying, so that's why you need to be playing with it, right? Because you have to learn to use it. It's like, you know, anybody can pick up a guitar and start playing it and make a bunch of noise, right? You have to learn to play the guitar, and Midjourney is the same way, right? You got to learn how to play it.
Yeah, and Marshall, if there's a shop that needed help right now and needed a coach, where could they reach out to you?
Yeah, you can go to my webpage, AtkinsonT-shirt.com. Got a bunch of stuff there. I write a blog every single week. So there's a whole bunch of articles. I've been writing a blog weekly since 2010. So there's a lot of information there. And you can also just email me. It's my name, Marshall@MarshallAtkinson.com. Happy to hear from you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Marshall. Thank you for your time. I know we're cutting it close, so I don't want to take up too much of your time.
Well, I'm happy to be here, Alex. Thank you so much for allowing me to be on your show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Let me